Greetings everybody, welcome. It's Thursday, it's Macro Talk 2. Today we are talking about printers and printing. Initially the idea was I was going to make an argument for printing in favor of doing home printing, but the more I thought about it, the more nuanced this thing became, and I decided that it would be better to give you a more balanced discussion. So I'm going to give you the pros and cons. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Anything like that going on? I hope so. Otherwise it would be kind of pointless. Joseph will say I've got to point my microphone further north for you to hear me. Okay, good. Well, couple of very quick announcements. Today, this week is not a Zoom week, so we're not having a Zoom meeting on Saturday, which is good because I am teaching or recording every day from now until Christmas. So I'll be busy anyway. If you're one of the 8 people that signed up for the bug sharing thing that I'm not going to repeat right now, but if you signed up for it, you need to get your money to me today or tomorrow so I can place the order and we can get the bugs in as quickly as possible. So that's happening now. And yeah, what else? If you left me a message in the messaging app, I got to most of them today. I'm back to old messages now, so make sure you did send that message through the messaging app at the Walls app. That's the only way I get messages anymore. At www.walls-app.com. And that's not dash, D-A-S-H, it's just dash. Got it? Okay, good. And let me see, there was one other thing. Christmas. Christmas is coming up, or it just happened, something like that. But Christmas is going to interrupt the flow of things. And I just wanted to let you know that there is a possibility that there are 2 events in danger if I end up not having internet where I'll be at Christmas. The first is Saturday's Zoom. That's next Saturday. If I can make it, I will make it, because that is just a Zoom thing. And I'll do my best to be there. I plan on it. I will plan on being on Boxing Day, that's the day after Christmas, Tuesday of next week. No, Tuesday of the week after next, after Christmas. I'm going to try, but that might be my travel day, so it depends on the roads. So there you go, I'll try. If I'm not going to be there, I'll get word and I'll cancel it on YouTube, so you'll know. Okay? Any questions or comments before we get going? What I'm going to talk about today are the pros and cons of printing at home. And there are lots of pros, compelling ones. There are quite a few cons as well, honestly. There are some serious downsides to doing it. And then we'll get into, see, I've got a pair of Canon printers over there and an Epson. And I am a printer kind of guy, and that means you're going to be getting a somewhat biased view of printing, because I do like to print, and I'll explain why. We're going to talk about the cost and kind of where a break-even point would be, because everybody wants to compare making prints to getting them ordered from a lab or wherever. We'll talk about the best printers, models to avoid without mentioning any names, why they break down and what we can do to prevent it. If we have time, I'm going to talk about the best ink, as well as the cheapest ink and the best papers, if we have time. That's a lot to cover. We may break some of that out and do it another time. If you have a specific question about printing, ask it, and I will try to work the answer into what I'm saying. Let's start with the pros and cons, and I'll go back and forth between the two. I've got a list of about 10 things that I think are important. The first is that you have complete control over the process. That is a big pro, in my opinion. Being able to decide exactly how your colors are balanced, what kind of color gamut you're using, what the whole print looks like. You can do that with a lab, but it takes forever, and it takes a good lab that listens to you and responds to your feedback. But if you have your own printer and it's a decent printer, you can tune this stuff yourself. And you can make the prints exactly the way you want them on your paper with your ink. You can use pigment, you can use the shaggy paper, whatever it is you want to do, you can do it because you have complete control. However, it's expensive. Some printers, they sell them really cheaply, like the Canons that I use. They get you into the printer really cheaply, and then they strap you down and put you through the tortures of the damned for the ink, to buy the ink. It's very expensive. Others are very expensive to buy the printer and not so bad on the ink, the Eco Tank ones. And then there are some that are just really expensive, period, the Pro ones. So yeah, it's expensive. You'll spend hundreds of dollars to get into a printer, possibly even as much as $1,000 for a decent consumer printer with a set of ink. $800 is about the average I think people spend. Okay, the second pro is you get immediate access to your prints. You don't have to send them to the lab and wait a month to get them back. And that is appealing to a lot of people, especially prints you're excited about and you've gone to a lot of trouble to make. That is much superior, in my opinion, to waiting for the lab. There is a learning curve. It is not as easy as printing off a PDF on your black and white printer, not by a long shot. You have to pick the software that makes the most sense to you. I used to print out of Lightroom. I don't do that anymore. I print out of Photoshop now, and it's far superior in my opinion. The prints I get are better, but I've been doing it for a long time, and I do not consider myself an expert printer, not by any means. I get some nice prints from time to time, well, most of the time, but certainly I'm constantly badgering my friends, especially Mike Canfa. He's a bit of a guru when it comes to printing stuff, so I get a lot of help, and you'll need that too. That's a con, it's not something that's really that easy to do. You can customize your prints, is a definite bonus. You can do with them whatever you want. You can make the sizes the way you want. Sometimes what I'll do is, I have a thing where I buy junk frames, used frames that I get at the thrift shop, surprise, surprise. They're in a box and they're broken often, and or no glass and in terrible shape. I bring them home, I refinish them, maybe rebuild them, put fresh glass in them and paint them. But well, I put the paint on first, then I put the glass in. And all my frames are similar. They're all black, but they have different ornate frame parts on them. But sometimes they're odd shapes. If I was restricted to only being able to put prints in frames that were the right size, half my frames would have to get thrown out. So no, I get the frame and then I find a print that I like to put in it. And I can customize the size exactly to where it fits just the way I want it. Can't do that easily with a lab. Okay, and that really is what the next con is. The lab gives you a limited range of size options unless you're willing to pay an absurd amount of money to get a custom job done. So that's the same downside, different side of the same coin. Did you follow that? I didn't follow that, but it sounded okay. All right. Cost efficiency is a pro if you can do it cost effectively, which means doing some clever things like getting your ink from a third party. It is possible for it to be cost effective, but let me tell you, it's unlikely if you print like I do, and I'll explain that in a minute when we get to cost. But it's a bit of a pie in the sky idea that you're going to actually break even printing at home, in my opinion. But I'll give you the numbers in just a minute. Quality consistency is a problem with labs. So there's a real issue with making your prints exactly the same every time, is what I'm trying to say. Not with the lab. The lab will give you the same print every time, pretty much. Good lab will, because they're using the same paper, they're using the same inputs for the colors for your printer, for your photograph, camera, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So every time you order them, they'll look the same. Every time I print a photograph, it looks different. Subtly sometimes, but different. Because I kind of jump around with my, I use the right codes and everything, but I tweak things a little bit. If it's a bit dark, I'll make it lighter the next time. And before you know it, you've got 5 prints and they're all very different. That is a problem for home printing. It is nice not to send your pictures to somebody else to print. You have some privacy there. That probably isn't an issue with bug photographers very much, but if you were doing like other types of photographs that involve people, for example, it would be nice to be able to print them for your clients at home. Or if you're not professional, be nice to print them at home and not have anybody else looking at them. Yeah, it's privacy. You know what I'm saying. The con that would go along with that would be that it takes up room. It takes up a big corner of my room to have the printers, the ink, the paper, everything, and room to make my frames and everything. It does. It's a big commitment in space. If you're living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, yeah, you might want to send your stuff out to get printed, because otherwise you won't have a dining room or area. So yeah, think about that. Not a lot of space. Convenience, obviously, you can print at a moment's notice, and I do all the time. I'll think of a picture that somebody said, oh, I'd like to have a copy of that, and I'll remember and I'll print it and put it in an envelope and send it off, and I can do that without having to make arrangements, and that is well worth it for me. When you print at home, one of the cons is you tend to waste a lot of ink and a lot of paper. The professional houses are printing constantly. They use every molecule of ink and every scrap of paper gets printed on. I make a test print, and that's a sheet of paper that costs a significant amount of money these days, plus the ink that goes on the paper. Every time I turn my printer on, and then every several hours during the day, it mixes my ink up, not mixes the colors, it shakes it up and squirts a little bit through the doodads at the end to keep them open. That's one of the things we're going to talk about, is how to ruin your printer. But if you're not doing that continuous maintenance, inkjet printers will clog, and then the head can be ruined. So you go through a lot of ink doing that. Sometimes there have been times when I haven't printed in months, and I come back to print something and realize that some of my ink is almost gone. That's just from the process of cleaning the heads. So bear that in mind, that it can be a little bit wasteful. There is some convenience to being able to get there is, we've talked about convenience. What we haven't talked about is artistic control. There are labs that will adjust your pictures to make them look better, which often means to make them look more like they are high, I'm forgetting my words today, I'm sorry, where they boost the colors, boost the saturation and everything, and the colors are awful. I've had that happen with several labs that I've tried. I sent them a muted picture that I wanted muted, and it came back super saturated. I cannot remember the name of that thing. It's the button you press on your camera when you want your pictures to look awful. High definition, something like that. Anyway, I never press it because I don't like the look of it. Where was I? There was the last one. The last pro it's fun. It's good fun. It's a rewarding and satisfying artistic expression. It's kind of like taking the picture in the first place. To me, it completes it. When I get a picture that I really like. Do you want to see a picture that I really like? I'm going to show you a picture that I really like. In fact, I'm going to show you two. This is a brief but important diversion. The reason is I was showing these pictures to somebody last night, and I like them and thought I'd show them to you. This is for people who are into bugs, though. It's I photographed the hooks on wings of wasps. Hamuli they're called, because they're fun to try to track down and photograph. Well, I was challenged to take a photograph of them hooked together, with the wings hooked together and the Hamuli in place. And I tried and I tried and I tried to hook some wings together, and finally got it 2 days ago, and took some pictures, and two of them I absolutely love. This is the first one. You can see the hind wing and the forewing and the Hamuli holding the two wings together. That's very unusual to see that. These are amputated wings, so they're separate. They're floating free. I might show a video of how I did that at some point, because it was pretty good fun. Let me just find the other picture real quick so that we can move on. If you're interested in that, if that kind of thing appeals to you, let me know in the chat, and I can rework the video to show you. Here's the second picture, and this is the same thing. It's actually the same wasp, just, in my opinion, a better picture. It's really a very unique look at those Hamuli holding the wings together. Anyway, isn't that fun? And I will absolutely, definitely print that picture. I'll print both of them because I like to look at them. They're very satisfying. There were a couple of other cons that I had down. It's time consuming. It really is. It takes time to set it up, set your printer up. Ink, we'll get to in a minute, but I buy third-party ink. This stuff, because I can get it all. I think last time I calculated it, I can get 7 cartridge refills for every one that I would buy from Canon, meaning 7 full sets I can refill from a bottle, or yes, from the amount of ink I could buy for one set of cartridges. They're $100 for a set of cartridges for that printer, and it takes 12 inks, I think. And yeah, for $100 you can get enough ink to fill them 6.5 times, I think, something like that. But I'll tell you about that in just a minute. Another con is when you're printing at home, you don't really have the luxury oftentimes of doing small run prints with unusual papers or finishes. Most printers, most consumer printers don't have some of those fancy abilities that the bigger places will have, putting nice finishes on the thing and printing on metal, printing on underwear, that type of thing. You can't do, well, I imagine you can't do it. I haven't tried, but yeah, so that's stuff to consider. They're the pros and cons. I definitely come down on the enjoyment and satisfaction, the control over the print, and being able to do it right here and right now. And that is well worth it. The cost of printing. It's expensive to print, any way you cut it. You have to invest in the equipment itself, and that would include, let's assume that you're going to get a printer like the Canon Pro 10 or Pro 100 that has a set of inks. You're going to need to get 2 sets of inks, one to print with and then the other to replace when they run out, which they will quite quickly. They come with little tiny bits of ink in the containers that run out instantly. So you'll have to plan ahead, and I would, if I was buying a printer today, I'd buy the printer once I checked that Precision Colors carried the ink, and then I'd order the ink from them. When you're refilling cartridges, by the way, you have to purchase. Oh, they're still over there at the printer. You have to purchase a second set of cartridges and use them, so you've got something to replace. I always keep 2 full sets of filled cartridges in a box ready to go. So the second I get a warning that one color is low, I change them all and then refill the ones I took out. So they're always full. And that is a huge headache saver, and it keeps the printer from clogging up. But we'll get to that as well. The cost per print is not just the cost of the printer amortized over the number of prints, but you've got to think of ink and paper, both of which are expensive. I use Canon paper mainly because I use this stuff, this semi-gloss, because I got 4 packets of it for $3.99. $3.99 at a thrift shop. But this is my main paper. This stuff, Pro Luster. It's really, really nice for an inexpensive everyday paper. It's not anything that you'd hang in the museum, though I imagine you probably could. It's a very good, very high quality, but not boutique-y type paper. Some of the boutique papers are so expensive. That's not cheap. $50 for a packet of I don't know how many sheets, 25 sheets maybe, 30, 50, don't know. I could bend down there and look, couldn't I? I dropped it, you see. 50 sheets, $1 a sheet, and that adds up, especially if you throw a few of them out too, as I tend to do. How often you print is a big deal. If you only print very rarely, forget about it. Your printer's gonna break down, your ink's gonna dry up, and when you try to print, it won't work. You've got to print. If you're going to get a printer, you need to commit to making a print every couple of weeks at the minimum to keep it alive. To figure out whether or not it's worth it, you also have to know what your lab is going to charge, so you've got something to compare it to. I have used several labs over the years, and I haven't really liked any of them, to be honest. Some of them were just really hoity-toity, and they just wanted to tell you how much they knew about your profile and everything, and others just did a lousy job, or the prints weren't consistent. So I don't use one right now. But let's do a quick calculation to see what kind of cost effectiveness you can come up with. Let's say, and you're going to have to just go along with me, that these are reasonable numbers. Your initial investment in a high quality printer is about $800, and that includes some paper and a set or two of ink. $800. So your cost per print at home for ink and paper is about $1.50. Say 75 cents for a sheet of paper, 75 cents for the ink that you'll use. Of course, that's going to vary. The cost per print from a professional lab, the same size, say, would be $3. That's probably low these days. It's probably more like $4. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're going to print 100 prints a month. Now, that would really only be if you were printing, to give to clients, or printing to put in publications or something. That's a lot to print, and I would dare say that most people, even avid printers, don't print that much. But your cost per month for printing at home, 100 prints, would be about $150 for the materials. Outsourcing it would be $300 or $400. Your monthly savings would be just the one minus the other. So say 200, middle of the road, $200 a month. That would take over 5 months at 100 prints. It would take over a year at 50 prints to break even. You'd be paying over the odds, and all the way up until then. And that might be worth it if you get enough pleasure out of it, but you need to figure that in. And that is, there are so many variables in that it probably is unhelpful really to think about the actual numbers. I'd love to know, if you're a printer, a home printer, or if you're not a home printer, why do you print at home, and where do you find the cost thing falls? Are you paying extra for this? Is it is the cost of making your prints worth it in terms of pleasure and control over the process? I noticed that my microphone was a little hot. I just turned it down a bit. I'm sorry if it was clipping at all. Okay, so what currently are the best printers out there? This is another thing that you can answer to, and I'm going to bring the filtered chat up so that I can see what peeps are saying. Oh yeah, Why is Photoshop better than Lightroom? It just is more intuitive for me to print from, and it gives me in Photoshop I can see the print that I'm going to get right away, and it's more accurate than when I use the proofing in Lightroom. So it just seems to be more accurate for me is why I use it. And the interface is just easier to scroll down and use. And I understand what all the questions are, which I don't in Lightroom. They ask questions, you have to check a box, and I don't know what either of them mean. So that's why I got away from it. Anyway, probably the biggest reason that I use and prefer Photoshop is because the people that I know who print the most and know the most about it prefer Photoshop. But you know, that's a terrible argument to give you. Let me see who else is out there. Let me see. Oh, holy mackerel! I just got a cup of hot tea for Christmas from Jim. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it, sir. That was very kind of you. Joseph, tell Alan that you can tell me directly. Any home printer can print on t-shirts or underwear if you use dye sub paper and transfer the print to the fabric. You fool, is what he was thinking. I've got one of those dye sub things. I found it, well, at a thrift shop, yeah. And I've never printed with it. It looks too complicated, but thank you. I'll bear that in mind if any of the underwear needs to be reprinted, I suppose. Does the type of glass used for framing make a difference? Yes, it most definitely does. I love to use, depending on the print, I like to use a non-glare glass. It has a very fine microscopic abraded surface on it that gives it just it's a very hint of frosting, but what it does is it prevents reflection. It's also, you can also buy archival quality glasses that don't fade or age over time, or they're perfectly flat. You can also buy rubbish glass and cheap glass. The stuff you get at the hardware shop to replace a broken pane of glass doesn't work for prints. It's very highly reflective usually, and it's uneven, the surfaces, and it kind of lenses the picture. So yeah, it does make a difference. There is a glass shop near where I live that actually does make glass for framing, and it is ridiculously expensive. It adds a lot to the price of the frame print, but the glass is superb quality, and it's nice and heavy, and it'll last forever. Avoid at all costs using polycarbonate or any other kind of plastic as a frame. It scratches, it just looks horrible, and it changes color over time. I think they even sell it trying to convince you that it's more durable, or it looks better than glass. It doesn't. So the glass does make a difference, absolutely. And by the way, if anybody has another opinion on any of these points that I'm being asked or we're making, please chime in. I'd like to hear what you think. I mean, this is really an area where I feel a little bit behind the crowd when it comes to just doing it enough to be really, really competent at it. I print all my own pictures, but that doesn't make me an expert. And I know that some of you guys out there are legit experts, so I want to hear from you. Viewing light to judge print, monitor brightness. When you're viewing a print, the lighting is going to affect everything, and of course when you're printing the print, the way you're looking at it on your monitor affects everything. I have a bad habit, and I think a lot of us do, of keeping my monitors too bright. I don't know where that came from, but it just makes it easier to see a lot on the monitors. But it's artificial. And oftentimes when I print, and this is why I like Photoshop, when I print from Lightroom, I have no idea what the print's going to look like in terms of brightness when it comes out. So be conscious of the fact that the brightness on your monitor and what the print's going to look like can be two radically different things. And of course, the print needs to be printed in order to be viewed in daylight or in gallery light or under a down light. Depending on where you're going to put it will determine how you light it in the printing. Mine are all basically just printed to be seen by daylight when I'm doing this. There's the ones I print and frame. I ask the person where they're going to put it before I print it, so that I can put it, make my tweak the profile so that it looks as good as possible in their setting. Okay, so we were getting ready to talk about papers, no, printers, best printers. These are not in any particular order, and they're just printers that I have used, or I have close friends who use frequently, who rave about them, or printers that I've frankly lusted after. Probably one of the most popular is the Epson, the Shore Color 800, I believe. It's a bit smaller than mine in terms of print size. Mine prints 13 by 19 is the largest size. I think that that particular Epson printer supports just about any paper you can throw at it, and it might take rolled paper too. I don't know that for a fact. Some of them do, and they're a definite advantage if you're going for big prints. But I would say that most people who print at home, who are not really aficionados of it and buy paper on rolls, are printing up to about 13 by 19. I think Susan just got a new printer that prints up to 13 by 19, and that's a very good size. Framed, 13 by 19 is a big piece of wall art. I would have to think long and hard before printing anything bigger than that, because people would see my pixels. Can't have that. Another one is that kind of boils to the top of the list is the Canon ProGraph Pro 1000. I think somebody, it might have been Ralph, just bought one of these, or somebody I know just bought one. It's a pro printer. It really is. It's again, it prints up to 16, 17 inches wide, so it's a bigger printer. And it does take rolled paper, I'm pretty sure. And I don't know how many inks, 10, 12? 12. Who's got the ProGraph? Hand up. Okay, the Shore Color does 17 by 22. Sorry, I was thinking it was 17 in height. 17 by 22, thank you. Do you have that printer? Oh, that's Bud. Yeah, you use that one? I can't remember what you use. Honestly, the reason I went with Canon, other than the fact that it's a very recognizable brand, was I was at my camera shop years ago, and they were giving them away. In fact, yeah, by the time they were giving a $200 discount for buying it, and then you got a $200 refund from Canon for buying it, and some free ink. And at the end of the day, it all washed and came out to $0 to leave with the printer, which is less than I paid for the one from the thrift shop. But then, of course, I discovered how much the ink cost. So there you go. But still a good deal. You won't get the ProGraph Pro 1000 either at a thrift shop or free. I can pretty much assure you. Hewlett-Packard makes the Envy Photo, the 7855. It's a budget one that I know several people make small prints with and like it. They think it's nice color. The Epson Eco Tank that I was referring to earlier, I think that's the 8550 is the number. That doesn't use cartridges. It uses tanks of ink, and I think it uses several. I think the 8550 has 4 or 5 different tanks, including a couple of different blacks. Yeah, I haven't used that, but I think that might be the one Susan just got. I'll be very interested to hear how that one works. It gets a lot of good reviews because of the savings on ink. Epson otherwise gets a lot of bad reviews for the cost of their ink cartridges, which may only have a gram or so of ink in them. And yeah, just incredibly expensive. The Pixma Pro 10 is what I have. I have a 10 and 100 over there. And the 10 uses a 10 ink pigment-based system, and it makes nice pictures up to 13 by 19. It's pretty easy to use. It can be very frustrating to set up the wireless though, and if you ever move, you have to download drivers and things to reset it up, and it's complicated, and I think they could do a better job of that. But pretty much all printers are like that. Well, in my experience anyway. But once you get it done, it prints wirelessly from my Mac with no problem at all. And I like it. I think it's, especially given how much I didn't pay for it, it's a good buy. There's an OfficeJet 9015 that Hewlett-Packard makes. It's a kind of multi-function printer, but I know a lot of people like that for making smaller prints, people prints, holiday prints, that type of thing. There is another Canon, another Pixma, but not the Pro. It's the TS9520. It's an all-in-one, but they make prints up to 11 by 17. That's the size I was mixing up with the Shore Color. So they're all good printers, but I'm sure that there are newer printers out there that I haven't seen. I haven't been shopping for a printer in forever, and I don't really look at a whole lot of the literature on them, but I know they come out frequently. And I know that companies like Precision Color have really put the screws to them about the price of their inks. As long as the inks stay as expensive as they are, I would have a hard time recommending home printing as a very cost-effective way of doing it, to be honest. It's the inks just make it ridiculous. And the Precision Colors, I'll put a link in the program description. You buy the ink, which is the same pigment stuff that Canon makes. I picked up, yeah, this is the magenta. The red is actually Canon red, because this company's honest enough to say, we can't make the red like Canon does. So all the other colors, and that's how many colors there are, all the other ones are perfect, but the red, they have to buy that from Canon, and this costs more than the others. But that's good. You know that they're really paying attention, and these are all pigment based, and they last forever. These bottles will last me, well, you can see them in there. These bottles will last me for 7 or 8 refills, and refilling takes 5 minutes. You just squirt it into the tank while you're measuring it weight-wise, and when the weight gets to whatever it's supposed to be, 22.5 grams or something, you stop, put a cap on it, put it in a little baggie, and it's ready to go. And yeah, I'm a big fan of that. If it wasn't for that, I bet I wouldn't be printing. I certainly wouldn't be printing as much as I do. A tip, if you decide to go with Precision Colors and you are a Canon printer, this may be true with others too, there is a particular color that's not a color at all. It's this thing. It's the Chroma Optimizer. It's a clearish yellow liquid that the printer uses more of that than it does the pigment. I recommend buying a big bottle of that because you'll go through it a lot quicker. The little tank's the same size, so it often is the thing that triggers me to change the other inks. But yeah, bear that in mind. Order a big bottle so you've got plenty on hand. Let me see, there were some other comments. Test printing. Yes, I don't always test print. If I'm doing a group of, like Christmas is a time when I will print prints to give to people, and I'll print them. And if I'm usually I'll print batches that seem to go together, at least in my eye, because it makes the printing easier. And once I've got one done, and I'll do a test print of the first one, if I'm happy with it, I can make my little tweaks as I go and not have to do a test print every time. But if I am doing a test print, I usually do it on a full-size piece of printer paper. For some reason, the things just don't look the same. They're not helpful if I try to print them on a smaller piece of a printer paper or do anything else to change them. I print them exactly as I'm going to print them. So that gets expensive. So I usually don't. That'll probably come back to haunt me at some point. Let me see, monitor calibration. Yes, well, my monitors are calibrated never, honestly, and need to be. Well, I do calibrate my monitors, but the problem is I don't understand how the BenQ and the Apple monitors calibrate differently, and the colors never quite look the same. But I know what the prints are going to look like because I always print them from my laptop. So, and that one I calibrate to Apple. Can't remember, the P3 or something like that. So yes, that's important. Learn how to do it and then tell me. Joseph, no monitor calibration. I'm assuming you'd want to see pretty exact colors in those insects. You know, let me be frank for just a second. Not really, because just as often as a color prints slightly less vibrant than I saw the thing with my eye, it also will surprise me by giving me more vibrance in another bandwidth that I wasn't expecting. Obviously, it looks about the same. But I do not sit and fret over the shade of yellow on a beetle's stripe. I really don't. If it looks good and it's a fairly accurate picture of the beetle, fairly accurate meaning I would recognize what the beetle was, then I'm not that kind of printer. I'm really not. I could spend the rest of my life trying to get the colors right, and I don't know enough about it to do it well. So obviously when I make a print, if it doesn't look like what I photographed, then I have to go back and look at my calibration and see that everything's okay. But small minor adjustments, as long as I know what it is, as long as I can appreciate the beauty of it, the way the print comes out, I'm fine with that. That's probably heretical to say such things, but that's the way I feel. I'm a coffee snob, but I'm not a printer snob, not by any means. If they look good, I'll go with it. Which is probably why I don't talk about printing very much, because I'm very conscious of the fact that these are not good arguments. This is not a very scientific way to approach printing, to tell you what I do, which is wrong. But you know, it's honest. So there's that. Let me see. Oh, there's a newer 900 Epson Sure color. Well, I will look that up. I didn't know that, and I'm sure it is a good one. They've got a printer down at my local printing shop. There's a shop that I've had brochures printed at that has a printer about as wide as this room, which is, I don't know, wide. It's massive, and it makes prints that will fill a wall. Yeah, that would be a monster to handle that. Imagine having to tear up a picture on that thing that didn't come out right. No, you'd get to like the colors the way they came out. Why are there some printers that are worth avoiding? Well, plenty of reasons for that. Some of them are just junk. They're junky made, and they don't operate properly from the minute you get them. Some of the first printers I got were like that. They were really, really cheap. And you have to figure in the fact that I keep being distracted by an enormous shield bug that's climbing on my window. It's tempting to go photograph. I'll show it to you. Oh dearie me. This is where I accidentally drop or turn off the phone. Let me see if I can get him in the This is called a distraction, and I don't think you're going to be able to see it because I can't zoom this phone in. It's on the, let me see, it's on the window on the left pane. See him? He's enormous, big wheel bug. I hate those things though. So I probably won't photograph it. All right, so where was I? Look for customer reviews. That's the best way to tell whether or not the printer you're getting is any good. The printers that are really pants, everybody hates, and they get 3.5 stars, which in Amazon world is worse than just garbage. So that's one to look for. Brand reputation is worth paying attention to. Canon has a really good reputation. They have reputations for being bad about a couple of things, but they're less important things, I think, than the quality of the prints. Look at the long-term costs. Most of these printers will give you estimates on what it'll cost you in terms of ink and paper over a period of time, and you can figure that in. Pay attention to what the model offers. If it's important for you to be able to print on different papers, make sure that your printer does that. Not all printers can print on strange materials or even unusual papers. My Canon actually has some limitations on what it can print, but I've not run into them because, frankly, I don't buy expensive paper either. I have, and I'll buy it. By the way, does anybody want any old-fashioned photography paper? Just the old blank paper? I picked up a box of it at the thrift shop the other day. A big box. It's Ilford, and it's very good, but I don't print pictures. I mean, on a printer I do, but I mean, this is for old-fashioned printing. If you want it, tell me, and I'll send it to you. So look at the features and functionality. If the thing doesn't do what you're going to be needing it for, don't buy it. Kind of obvious, right? Yeah, you'll be amazed. People discover that later on. Why do they break down? And what can we do to limit the breakdowns and the cost associated with that? Well, there are a million reasons. Probably the most common thing you're going to see with any printer is the paper getting jammed up in it, and it happens with my Canons. If the paper has a dog ear on it, or if it's bent in a certain way, it won't get picked up by the rollers. What'll happen with a printer over time is the rollers that feed the paper in can become sticky or flattened if you haven't been using the printer, and they can be deformed in shape and they won't pick up the paper properly, and maybe one side will push it further than the other, paper goes in sideways and gets jammed, wrapped around the axle, so to speak. That will ruin the printer after a period of time. It can ruin the printer after one go around if it's bad enough, but paper jams are traumatic to the printer to have and to get the paper out, so it's best to avoid them. And I only ever print one sheet at a time, which I put in manually from the back of the printer. I don't let it auto feed. Auto feeding is where the papers will stick together and two will go in and cause a jam. So now you know. Now, ink and toner, or in this case ink basically, there are things that you can do wrong even if you're refilling cartridges. One of the things that happens when I refill the cartridges is I have to reset the chip so that the cartridge thinks or the printer thinks the cartridge is a new full cartridge. Otherwise, it will still think it's the old cartridge that was in there that's almost empty, and it'll give you an empty warning too soon. So when you buy your inks, you'll buy a little chip reader that will reprogram the chip every time you refill it, and you just reprogram it and put it back in, and it says it's a full cartridge. If you don't do that, you'll end up with all kinds of issues with not having ink, and the worst thing that you can do is try to run a print where your ink, it won't let you do it usually, but if you mess up the chip, it might try to print when there isn't any ink to push through, and that can cause the printer head problems and clog up the hoses. So print head problems is the next, and usually that comes from either not printing often enough, sometimes printing too often, printing with the wrong kind of paper, wrong kind of ink, or cleaning the things can ruin them. You've got to clean them in a very, very specific way. I have cleaned the printer heads on my Canon when I had to for some clogged stuff, and I got it clean, but you have to use a special liquid and a very particular sequence of events. It's not for the faint of heart, but get good ink and you'll probably not have print head problems, and use the printer. Yeah, if you do those two things, you'll be good. Software is a problem usually only when you change something, like if you get a new computer, get on a new wireless network or something, it can go haywire on you. And for the longest time with my Canon, I was having to actually run a long cable from my computer to the printer just to print. Haven't had any of those problems since I got the software fixed, but software issues are a big deal. You need to keep your software updated and periodically check that to make sure that you're up to date. And that goes along with the next one, which was connectivity problems. They can be so frustrating that I've seen people get rid of their printer because they couldn't ever get the wireless thing fixed. So it's worth looking at. They do fail mechanically, but I've never had one fail mechanically. Oh, shouldn't have said that, should I? They can fail mechanically. A bit can break because they're mostly made of plastic. Well, plastic and metal. But parts will snap, gears will lose teeth, and there's lots of little bendy arms and springs to break and fall apart. So, yeah, they can break down, but and I suppose most of them are built with some obsolescence planned in. But I've been extremely happy with two printers in my life. One was an HP LaserJet that I had for over 15 years. I still have, actually. I bet it would still print, but that was black and white for printing documents. Loved that printer. And my Canon. They are the two that I would recommend. The one sitting next to it that I print my office stuff on, I would not recommend to anybody unless you needed a large black paperweight that drank ink all day long. Yeah, then it would be a good one, and I'll tell you about it. Environmental factors, where you're going to keep your printer, is important, and you can prevent your printer from quitting on you by keeping it in a well-maintained area. That's a place that gets cleaned frequently, like not my house. It wouldn't do well in my workshop. Nothing would do well in my workshop. So keeping the printer's lid closed, the paper trays closed, all of the feed chutes closed when you're not using it, very important. You leave those things open, dust gets on the rollers, it gets pulled into the machine, and it will build up over time, and it can cause problems. So be aware. Dust and dirt, bad. It is bad to not use your printer. It is bad to overuse printers. These are not commercial printers. They're not made to be operating 24 hours a day. They have a duty cycle that is far more gentle than that. So just be aware, if you're a pro and you're looking for a volume printer, you might want to look at commercial type printers rather than consumer grade. These are not made for that kind of volume. Underuse is a much more common problem with photographers, and my issue is one of cyclic overuse. I'll not use the printer for a couple of months because I'm busy doing other things, and then I'll suddenly get on a printing jag and I'll print 100 pictures. That is probably not the best way to do it. It's better to spread the work out and do it as it needs to be done. I don't have any science for that. It just seems to make sense. And certainly paper, when you're pulling it out, if it gets jammed in there, the Canon has a button you can press and it will feed it out rather than you pull it out, and that's a better way to go. If you're going to get one of these printers, get an uninterruptible power supply or a circuit breaker thing. You know what I'm talking about. So when you're hit by lightning while you're sitting at your desk, the spark doesn't jump to your printer and ruin it. Protect it with one of those circuits. Somebody will tell me what the name of that is. What is it called? It's got a fuse in it. Yeah, anyway, just use one of those to protect the printer and you'll be good. You use it for your computer, I hope, so it's the same thing. And the lack of maintenance. Now, most printers these days will do the maintenance themselves. You just need to leave them powered on so that they can do it. And it does use up ink. Be aware of that. And every now and again, you're going to want to do the alignment process and everything. Follow the recommendations the company makes. They usually know. Not always, but usually. So let me see. Ink, we can talk about very briefly. There are really two kinds of ink for color printing photographs. One is the dye-based ink, and the other is the pigment-based ink. What's the difference? Well, pigment-based it's got suspended bits of color in it, and it's known for having long-lasting, high-quality prints, but they don't fade over time like the dyes do. They'll stay vibrant for longer. The pigment inks are less likely to get runny or smudgy as they're printing, though I've seen it happen. It can happen. And you get better detail if you're using matte paper when you're using pigment. When you're using dye, it's cheaper, for one thing, quite a bit cheaper. And if you're just making regular prints, it's probably all you need. It does make really bright saturated colors when you're using shiny paper. Two things I never do. I don't oversaturate and I don't use the glossy paper. But if you do, the dye-based inks will really boost that up. You can use the dye-based ink on anything. Basically, it'll print on just about any kind of paper, and it dries a lot faster than the pigment does. The pigment's fiddly and a bit of a pain and expensive and worth every bit of it. So bear that in mind. And be aware that not all printers can print in all kinds of ink. Like the Epson that I was talking about that I think Susan got, uses the tank. Now that is a dye-based ink that it comes with, but you can kind of retrofit it. If you do it before you run a print with dye, you can switch it over to pigment and it will print pigment. If that's the right model Epson that I'm thinking of. But there is a real visible difference in the two, especially if you're going to be using some specialty papers. I will one more time plug the refillable cartridges thing. It saved me so much money, I can't stand it. Let's talk for 1.5 minutes about paper. Epson Ultra Premium is probably the most popular high quality paper. Canon's Pro Platinum and Pro Luster and Pro Semi-Gloss, the two that I have, fantastic. Hahnemühle makes a Baryta paper that's a very famous, very ridiculously expensive. They also make a rag paper that's a specialty paper that looks very cool if you take photographs that look good in that medium, but that stuff's too expensive for me. Ilford, they have a smooth pearl, which is like the Pro Luster, and a gold fiber, which is a silk paper, which is expensive too. Canson is very popular. They have a Baryta that's got another name, Photographique or something, but it's very popular, very artsy. And they also have a rag, also Photographique, which is popular as well. Moab by Legion, they make good paper. What's it? Exhibition paper, and again, very boutique, very expensive. My opinion, if you're going to print like I do, just to have a record of the picture, get that Canon paper. It's fantastic, it's affordable, it looks great, and it works. I can't believe we covered everything. That was everything that I had on my list to talk about, and it's 3 o'clock. Well, it's a minute and a half to go. I'm going to look at the comments just real quick and see if there's anything important that I need to respond to. Uninterrupted power supply. Yep, I got that part. It's the bit that that the lightning can't get through. What's that called? I can't remember. And let me see. You want your prints to come out consistent and good. Try Q Image. Consistent color management, great color profile management. Yes, I have never heard of that, but yeah, I'll look into it. I found that once I had the right color profile for my equipment and paper and ink and what have you, I just leave it alone. It seems to work. I don't try different papers very often unless I find them. You know where I find them. I'm not going to tell you, but yeah, I'll definitely try anything that I find. But I'm happy with what I've got. It seems to work for me, and I'm sure that yours will be working for you too. If for any reason I don't see you next week at one of the live streams, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a safe holiday, and great times with your families, whatever it is you're doing, running away from the family, whatever. Hope you have a good holiday, and I will see you hopefully on Saturday before, if you're a Zoom visitor, or I will see you on Tuesday after Christmas for a Boxing Day special. Won't be special, it'll just be a Boxing Day, but I'll do a live stream. And then it's New Year's after that, and I'm not even there yet, not thinking about it. If you ordered bugs, get the money to me, and I will get that taken care of. And that's it. That's everything that I had to say. Thank you to Amy, thank you to Bud, thank you to Alistair for being the bouncers and doing such a good job. Thank you to you for coming and watching, and thanks to everybody who has supported me over the years, and especially during the recent bit of activity in trying to hire somebody. I have got an update to give you, and I will get that out here shortly. We're doing something to automate that process, which is why it's taking a little bit longer than I thought. But Patrick is on it, so it won't be long. Okay, guys, have a great one, and let me just jump over to YouTube real quick and see if there's anybody still here. How many folks showed up today? Did we have a good turnout? Yes, we had an excellent turnout. Fantastic. Who's boxing? Boxing Day, it's a thing, I think it's where you put stuff in boxes after Christmas. The deal is, in England, once Christmas is over, like at midnight on Christmas Day, it's back to work, please. So they had to have a holiday to give you another day to get over the hangover. That's what Boxing Day is, in my opinion. But it's depressing too, because Christmas is over, which used to be a big thing when I was a kid. All right, guys. Merry Christmas to everybody, and thank you all for coming. And boy, so many names, I didn't know you guys were here. But I would have stopped and talked and would never have got anything covered. You know that. Let me see. There's some interesting things here. Some modern dye ink, says Larry, can do 100 years. Oh, so, right. So my thing about it not lasting as long is off by 100 years, basically. Well, there you go. That's why I needed you guys to chime in and correct me. Okay, let me see. Surge protector. Susan Seaford, well done you. That is exactly what I was trying to think of. Surge protector. Yeah, protect you from surges. Okay, guys, have a Merry Christmas if I don't see you before, and if I do see you before, it'll be on Tuesday. Or in a video. So one of those two. Take care, stay safe, and be well. All the best.